Every February, billions celebrate a day for love, but its roots are anything but romantic. Long before roses and heart-shaped candy, survival and power shaped a brutal ritual. One Roman festival involving animal sacrifice, another claiming to purify an entire city. So how did this ancient ritual become modern Valentine's Day? And why did so many legends and motives get layered onto just one date? The real story changes everything you think you know about history's most romantic holiday. In the ancient world, February was a month of deep anxiety and hope. For communities across Europe, the end of winter meant more than cold nights and empty stores. It decided who would survive to see spring. In Celtic lands, people gathered for Imbolc, a festival that began at sunset on February 1. The name comes from Old Irish, meaning in the belly, a reference to pregnant ewes and the promise of new lambs. Fires burned through the night, honoring the goddess Brigid, guardian of hearth and fertility. Families feasted, swept their homes, and placed offerings of milk and bread on doorsteps. White and yellow flowers decorated altars, echoing the first signs of life pushing through the frost. Imbolc was about cleansing the darkness, welcoming the sun, and asking for the land's renewal. Rome, too, faced the same uncertainty as winter waned. But the city answered with a ritual far more public and raw. On February 15, Romans gathered for Lupercalia, a festival with roots stretching back to the city's earliest days. The Luperci, priests chosen from noble families, assembled at the Lupercal cave on the Palatine Hill, the legendary den where a she-wolf was said to have nursed Romulus and Remus. Here, they sacrificed goats and a dog, symbols of fertility and purification. Two young men had their foreheads smeared with blood, then wiped clean with wool soaked in milk. Laughter broke out, a ritual sign that the city's sins had been purged. The priests cut strips from the goat hides, called februar, and ran through the streets, nearly naked, striking anyone they passed. Women stepped forward willingly, believing the touch of the februar would grant them fertility and safe childbirth. The entire city watched as the boundary between sacred and profane blurred. There were no secret love notes, no private couples, just the hope that these ancient rites would coax the earth and its people back to life. In both Celtic and Roman worlds, February was a time to face the unknown together, trusting in ritual to turn the wheel of the seasons once more. By the late 5th century, the old rituals of February faced a new kind of authority. In Rome, Pope Gelasius III stepped into a city still haunted by the memory of Lupercalia. Official records from his reign, between 492 and 496 Common Era, describe a determined campaign against what the church viewed as pagan excess. Gelasius condemned the festival's public spectacles, calling them indecent and outdated. The Liber Pontificalis, a papal chronicle from the 6th century, credits him with abolishing Lupercalia, but it never claims he replaced it with anything new. Despite popular stories, no surviving letter or decree from Gelasius links the end of Lupercalia directly to the rise of a Christian feast on February 14. Yet, by this time, February 14 already appeared in Christian calendars as a day to honor a martyr named Valentine. The earliest Roman martyrologies, dating back to the year 336, list a Saint Valentine on this date, long before Gelasius's intervention. But who was this Valentine? The historical trail splits almost immediately. Church records from the 5th and 6th centuries mention at least 3 different martyrs named Valentine, a Roman priest, a bishop from Terni, and a third figure from African. Each suffered under Roman persecution, but their stories diverge. The Roman priest was said to be executed for aiding Christians. The bishop of Terni, according to later legends, healed a child before his death. The African Valentine remains a shadow, his name recorded, but his deeds lost. None of these early accounts mention romance, secret marriages, or love notes. The earliest written stories about Valentine's acts focus on faith and martyrdom, not affection. Over centuries, hagiographers layered new details onto the old names. By the late Middle Ages, tales began to surface of a priest who defied an emperor's ban on marriage, performing secret weddings for young lovers. Another story described a final letter sent from prison, signed, "From your Valentine." These details, now central to the holiday's myth, do not appear in any document before the 14th century. This confusion, multiple saints, overlapping legends, and a calendar coincidence created fertile ground for new meanings. The Church's strategy was not to erase old customs in a single stroke, but to redirect the focus. The public rituals of fertility and purification faded, replaced by quieter stories of personal sacrifice and devotion. In the centuries that followed, these fragments would give future generations a blank canvas, ready for new traditions to take root. In the waning days of the 14th century, a new idea began to take root in Europe, one that would forever change the meaning of February 14. The English poet Geoffrey Chaucer, writing in 1382, composed a playful and ambitious work to honor the royal engagement of King Richard II and Anne of Bohemia. In his poem, Parliament of Fools, Chaucer imagined a gathering of birds on St. Valentine's Day, each one seeking a mate as spring approached. He wrote, "For this was on St. Valentine's Day, and one every fowl cometh there to cheese his mate." The notion that birds chose their partners on this date was more poetic invention than observation, but it struck a chord with the nobility. As courtly love flourished in the halls and gardens of medieval Europe, writers and nobles alike began to treat Valentine's Day as a time for romantic gestures. The feast shifted from a day commemorating a distant martyr to an occasion for secret tokens and declarations of affection. By the early 15th century, the idea had traveled across the Channel. In 1415, Charles, Duke of Orleans, imprisoned in the Tower of London after the Battle of Agincourt, penned a verse to his wife, addressing her as his Valentine. His letter survives as one of the oldest known Valentines, written not in secrecy, but in longing and hope. Through the pens of poets and the rituals of the court, Valentine's Day became less about public ritual and more about private devotion. The language of birds and lovers replaced the old stories of martyrdom, setting the stage for a holiday centered on romance and choice. By the dawn of the 19th century, Valentine's Day was no longer just a poet's holiday or a courtly custom. The printing press, once reserved for Bibles and broadsheets, turned affection into a product. In London, printers sold booklets with ready-made verses, templates for the tongue-tied. These pamphlets found eager buyers, but the real explosion began when industrialization met sentiment. In Worcester, Massachusetts, Esther Howland saw an opportunity. Inspired by ornate English cards, she started assembling Valentines by hand in 1847, using imported lace and colored paper. Her first year brought in $1,000, but by the 1870s, her factory was filling orders worth $100,000 annually. Workers, mostly women, sat in rows, pasting, folding, and boxing up tokens of affection for delivery across the country. Meanwhile, in England, Richard Cadbury was searching for new ways to sell chocolate. In 1861, he introduced a heart-shaped box, an idea that soon became inseparable from the holiday. By 1868, Cadbury's boxes were advertised as keepsakes, meant to be saved long after the sweets were gone. Across the Atlantic, the New England Confectionery Company launched Sweetheart's Conversation Hearts in 1901, printing tiny messages such as "Be Mine" and "True Love" on pastel candies. By the 20th century, these treats had become a fixture in classrooms and candy shops. The numbers tell the story of transformation. In 2023, Americans spent $25.8 billion on Valentine's Day, from roses and chocolates to dinners and jewelry. What began as a handful of handwritten notes became a tidal wave of cards, confections, and commercial rituals. Romance, once whispered in private, now played out in storefronts and statistics. Every February, billions celebrate a ritual shaped by centuries of reinvention, not ancient decree. As culture, commerce, and belief keep rewriting what love means, even our oldest traditions prove remarkably new. What other holidays, we call timeless, are really just stories we keep choosing to tell. Let me know your thoughts below.